Hello and welcome back. My name is Anthony and I'm a sales engineer at Sonoma Partners. Today we're bringing you this new video to take a much deeper dive into how we typically see and recommend consulting firms utilize Dynamics 365. Now we preface this deeper dive video with an overview in which we started on our iPad, we looked at an account record, contact record, and an opportunity record. We went in our browser, got a much larger, broader look at our client, as well as a 50,000 foot view of the business as a whole. In this deeper dive video, we're going to go through much more features that we think would definitely be supportive as you're trying to grow your book of business and your pipeline in the consulting space. Now, we're going to start off our presentation today with an outlook, where we understand that a majority of partners, principals, and consultants start their day out. Now, as you can see, I'm sitting on an email here from Mark Dayton, and I'm logged into Outlook web client as Bryson. Bryson is the partner at our consulting firm, getting this email from Mark Dayton, who is a contact that we have at Johnson & Johnson. Now, in the context of this email, Mark says, "Hey, Bryson, just wanted to make sure there's nothing else you need for me to get the proposal ready for our meeting next week." Now, typically, as we understand, in the past, that might just live within the head of that partner. This email might not ever leave his inbox. Others will not know that that conversation had been had. Now, with a really deep integration with Dynamics 365 and the overarching Office 365 platform, you may have noticed near our reply button at the top that there's this little button for Dynamics 365. And if I click that button now, what this is going to do is bring open a little sidebar that is actually giving us direct access into our Dynamics 365 environment. So again, I got this email from Mark. So automatically, this add-on is looking back into Dynamics, notices we have Mark as a contact, and it's starting to give me some relevant information about him. I know what his title is, the company that he's with, some contact information. I know what was the last activity that was had with Mark. Even some notes, as you can see at the bottom. It looks like just recently he went on his wedding anniversary, and right below that he got a new dog, and here's a little picture that goes along with that. So you could even surface attachments through here. What this app now gives us the option to do, as opposed to just having this email living within Bryson's inbox, is using these buttons, these little chain links next to either Mark's name or the client name right here. We can now track this email back to each one of those individual records. For the sake of the demo, we'll do that today right up against Mark Dayton's contact record, just by hitting these chain links here. And you'll notice at the top when I do that, it automatically brings up a regarding contact area where we're getting some scorecard information about Mark. And we know at the top here that this email is now tracked against Mark Dayton's contact record so that others within the organization with the right permissions and security can see that this email exchange had happened. Additionally, what we can do now through this app is actually take activity action against this email. So you saw that we tracked this email back against Mark's contact record. Now using this button right below Mark's name here, this little plus button, you'll notice directly from the email we could use this as a context for things like a brand new task, appointment, or phone call. So let's say from this email we want to set up that meeting with Mark to talk a little bit more through the proposal that we're generating for him. I can click this plus button, the appointment option here, which will open up for us a brand new appointment that's going to sync with Dynamics in our Outlook calendar. Automatically, it knows who the owner is because I'm logged into my Outlook. It knows that it's regarding Mark Dayton as our contact. The subject is the subject of the email. And down below the description you can see is actually the context of the email that I received from Mark. Now from here, what I can do is simply just hit this save button. And as I mentioned, it's going to save that back into my calendar. And we will have Mark invited to that since he is a required attendee to that event. Now, I also have some options to interact with this email and track this interaction as I'm going in to reply to Mark. So if I go out of this app now and I go back to the email itself and I click the reply button, you'll notice that that same Dynamics 365 app icon is shown up for our reply here. And if I click that now, it's going to bring up a lot of the same information, some contextual information about Mark, the summary information about him, those same notes that we saw before. But as you've probably noticed now at this top toolbar, we're actually bringing in some additional tools that might support us in the reply of this email that are coming directly from Dynamics. And that includes things like templated responses that we could send out to Mark, sales literature if that's relevant, as well as knowledge base articles. So if this is a question that maybe Mark has proposed to us, we can search our document repository, our internal knowledge base repository, to help support finding the answer that we can get a reply out to Mark with. So now we've gone ahead and received that email from Mark. We've tracked it back to Dynamics and we set up an appointment with him to talk through the new proposal that we're going to be working on for an opportunity that we're pursuing with Johnson & Johnson. So we find ourselves now on the road. Bryson's on the road and he's got 10 minutes in this cab ride to get a good understanding of the state of his business, where we're at with Johnson & Johnson, where we're at with the opportunity that we're working on with them, and maybe even finding out some personal information about Mark Dayton so that we are up to speed and relevant when we're going into the conversation with him. What we're looking at here is the native Dynamics mobile application. And the first thing that Bryson sees when he logs into this app is this concept of a Today view. And in this Today view, we see a handful of different areas of features. On the left-hand side, things that we're calling action cards that sit within a relationship assistant. And in here, this is actually Dynamics generating action cards for us based on what we have sitting back in our CRM system and offering us insights into the way that we should probably handle our work as we go throughout our workday. So in here, you could see some action cards generated for things like an opportunity that's set to be closing soon. Maybe we need some additional action on that. Now, this relationship assistant, these action cards are also synced up with Exchange and Outlook. So you see that it's also parsing through the inbox, my emails in my inbox, and finding keywords from contacts that I have that sit back in Dynamics and generating these cards for me to say things like, looks like you have an email from Mark that's requesting a new file. Alternatively, it looks like you have an email that is suggesting a potential lead and another one that's awaiting a response. So this just gives me, again, an idea of how I should go through tackling my day-to-day work and what I should focus on first. Also through here at the bottom toolbar, you notice that we have quick features to do things like creating new activities, creating brand new records, brand new notes. On the right-hand side, I have a list of my favorite records that I've basically pinned to say these are the ones that I interact with most often. I want to have those at the front so that I can go in and interact with those pretty quickly without having to go through any search to find the records that I want to interact with. And down below that, you see quite a bit of recently viewed records as well. Now, as I mentioned, we're in this cab ride, 10 minutes, need to understand the account, opportunity, and the contact. The first thing that we're going to look at is that Johnson & Johnson account. So this is where we actually start getting into some really specific consulting material as we go through this. As you can see on the top left-hand corner, things like a scorecard that are specifically tailored to the consulting space, when the next invoice is due, when the last touch point was, and even things like what is the health of the client. Down below that, we see our key contact in Mark Dayton. And as we scroll forward, we start looking at summary information. So again, what is that client health? What is our actual firm profit from Johnson & Johnson? Even gathering things like the marketing segmentation so that as we get to know Johnson & Johnson as a client, we can pass this over to our marketing team so that they can more effectively market out to our client on behalf of things like campaigns and events that we might be holding. Going forward, things like open activities and scheduled activities. We have a list of notes here that again can include things like attachments. We also have OneNote notebooks. So again, back to the concept of having Dynamics and Office 365 pretty seamlessly embedded within one another. We have a OneNote notebook that maybe was automatically generated when we created this client record so that we have this collaborative space. And if I were to click on any one of these notebooks here, you'll notice that it opens up the OneNote application on your mobile device so that you, again, can go in and collaborate through there. We'll go back to the Dynamics app now, show you a couple more areas, things like our contacts that we have at Johnson & Johnson, the recent opportunities that we're working on with them. We also see things like the current practices that we're currently offering to them, and alternatively, what could be some potential client needs based on the things that we're not offering to them yet. Through here as well, we have our team records, who internally is working on this client with us and what role do they play. And then another list of all the completed scheduled tasks, as you can see at the back end here. Now, that was pretty quick as we went through that. Again, we saw some basic information about the account. If we go back on the left-hand side where we had that scorecard, and you notice all of our key contact and our related records on the left-hand side, there's also an area there for documents. And it's important to show this because Dynamics has an integration with SharePoint and OneDrive, a native integration with SharePoint and OneDrive, so that if I click this button for documents, I actually have a living, breathing document repository that sits in the Johnson & Johnson account. So if you think about it, this could include things like proposals, it could include things like sales literature, PowerPoint presentations, that you can have on the go now as a partner or principal as you're going into these meetings with your clients and be able to bring that up pretty quickly to be able to talk about some more information about as we're going through the opportunity, what would be helpful to them. Now, if we go back here, the next thing that we're going to take a look at, I went back to that today view, is our contact in Mark Dayton. So I'm going to click his contact record here. Now in here you notice form is very similar. So as we're navigating, it's pretty easy to understand. Once you know how to get around one entity within Dynamics, the rest of them make sense as you start flowing through. So our contact information for Mark Dayton, in our top left we have our scorecard, which has changed a little bit. Now it's showing things like when was our last contacted date, when is his birthday or his anniversary. In the summary area here, we have the contact information for him, some scoring for him, address, phone number, and email address. And as you'd imagine, anywhere that has that blue hyperlink text is an area where we can click on something like his email address, which would bring up either our native mailing application or Outlook to start composing out an email to Mark. As we scroll forward, again, a list of open activities, some notes that we're tracking, and then some more personal details about Mark. Again, we want to understand on a personal level where we're at within our relationship with him so that we're relevant in the conversation when we show up to this meeting. So I know who his spouse's name is, a personal bio about him. I know what newsletters that he's subscribed to, as well as what, in terms of contact methods, what he's opted in and out of at the very bottom here, which would be helpful to our marketing team. Now, the last thing that we want to take a look at, as I mentioned, was the opportunity. I'm going to go back to our today view to find that, which is this fourth button that you see at the top left-hand corner here. As you'd imagine, alternatively, what I can do is click this magnifying glass in the top right to be able to search for that record. But I pinned that for a reason, because it's a record that I continuously work with and I want to have easy access to. So here we're going to click the Johnson & Johnson opportunity. Again, form looks the same. So as you're learning to navigate around the system, again, it's very easy and seamless to go across different entities within Dynamics. Scorecard has changed now again. Now we're seeing things like our estimated close date, our estimated revenue, who the primary partner is, and what is the health of this opportunity in terms of maybe our estimated close date versus the date that we are currently sitting at today. Now through here, again, summary information, all customized now to the consulting space. So who is our member firm that is owning this opportunity? What is the service line, the industry group, the priority? At the very top, you notice the green chevrons, we have an area for what we're calling a business process flow, which is essentially for us a guidance or coaching as we're going through the course of the opportunity that we know is a recipe for success for our consulting firm to say, if you follow these steps and if you collect these pieces of information, you are more likely than not going to win this opportunity. You're going to have a high probability of winning. So the meeting with Mark went great. We are back at our desk now and we are ready to move forward with the opportunity and start actually converting this into a project to get over to our team. Now, as you see, I'm logged into Dynamics via the web browser. And for consistency's sake, it's worth pointing out that everything we're seeing at this point right now is the same as what we saw on the mobile device, the things that are important for us as a partner or principal or consultant to have on the go at all times, including things on the left like our summary information, the account information, the marketing segmentation. In the middle houses our activity feed, things like the emails that are being tracked. Here's the email that we tracked from Mark Dayton earlier in the demo. We also have open and completed tasks through here as well. And you'll also notice through the top that Relationship Assistant is being surfaced here too. So those action cards that are giving us some actionable insights that we should be taking with Johnson & Johnson. On the right are our related records, those related contacts, related opportunities and projects that we're working on with the client. Now, the web browser offers us quite a bit more capability, and you'll start to notice those here as we scroll down. The first one here being a tab for customer insights, in which we're using a tool like Inside View to parse through thousands and thousands of different sources publicly available through the web to give us what's new and exciting about Johnson & Johnson, what's in the news about Johnson & Johnson, again, so that when we're in that next meeting with them, we can be relevant and up to date about the state of their business. As I scroll down a little bit further, you see we're doing a lot more around relationship tracking. In fact, on the left-hand side here, we've got a graphic design that actually shows in kind of a spider web or map view here, Johnson & Johnson that sits in the middle. And we know just by using native connections in Dynamics, which contacts are associated with Johnson & Johnson. Maybe it's an employee/employer relationship. We also know maybe subsidiaries of Johnson & Johnson, as you can see here. What's really nice about this, and a very LinkedIn style way to consume this, is as we're noticing Mark Dayton as a contact to Johnson and Johnson, we're seeing even farther down that depth of the relationship tree that we also have contacts that are associated with Mark Dayton down here. So as you could imagine, we now can take the relationships we know through Mark Dayton and try to make inroads with these other contacts that might be sitting within other companies that we're trying to grow our book of business with. In the top right-hand corner, we're tracking our interactions between Exchange and Outlook, so we know which contact has been getting the most interactions and whether or not we have them synced in CRM. We have our member firm scores, so if this is a large enterprise account like Johnson & Johnson is, and different member firms are associated with them and play a different part within the growth of that business, we know what role that they play here and the impact that they have on the success of growing our business with Johnson & Johnson. Scrolling down even a little bit further, that same white space reporting we saw on mobile, the current services that we're offering the client now, and down below that, the unsold services, things that might be relevant as we try to grow the potential needs that they might have. On the right-hand side, even getting some graphical representations of our revenue by different things like a specialized service or a service line. And as we finish up this form for the client record, we also have at a high level, a holistic view, our strategic plan this year for Johnson & Johnson. How do we truly plan to grow this book of business over the next 12 months? And we've narrowed that down into a couple different areas that we think are very relevant in the consulting space. The first being just account objectives, different objectives that are assigned to different folks internally that they can use to grow the book of business. Again, relationship goals, personal goals that we have at our contacts with the client. Who is our team and allies? Again, who internally has their hand in this account and what role do they play? And at the bottom right, some tasks, some strategic planning tasks that we want to complete within this year to grow this book of business, to learn a little bit more about Johnson & Johnson and have them be a bigger impact on our pipeline. The next area that we're taking a look at here is that opportunity that we were working on with Mark. As I mentioned, the meeting went great. We're ready to move forward and actually convert this into a project, assuming that we've won this opportunity. It's worth taking an extra look at this form. As you can see, that same business process flow sits at the top, our activity feed in the middle. We're tracking some additional information here, similar to what we did on the account side. We're tracking now our stakeholders in here and what role do they play, who our sales team is, even doing some competitor tracking, looking at things like how many events have they RSVP'd to in the past, which could be an indicator of a higher probability to close this deal. On the left-hand side, even managing things like revenue splits between individual owners. And as you might have noticed, this grid looks a little bit different because this is the native editable grid within Dynamics, in which right in the context of this grid right here, we can go in and make changes to this. If I wanted to update percentages for Jill at the bottom here, I can go in. You notice that that text field is editable, which would automatically save those changes back to this revenue split area of the form. Now let's assume, as we said, that we've won this opportunity, we're moving forward through this process flow, and we're actually at the point of converting this over into a project in which we'll start staffing our team and getting this project rolling and underway. So now we're sitting on a project record that was automatically created from that opportunity that we were previously just working on with Johnson & Johnson. Through here, you notice that we have a new business process flow at the top where we're actually going through things like quoting for the project, planning, delivering, and completing. In our summary information below, we have different areas of fields here. We have the project name, who our customer is. We have currency. We could even manage different currencies, who our member firm is that's going to be handling the deliverables on this work, who our project manager is, and even the ability to add things like project templates. So maybe this tax or advisory opportunity that we close, these services that we offer, this is a pretty standardized stock deliverable that we offer out to our clients, in which we know which resources we need, when we're going to need them, what we bill for them, and how long it's going to take them to complete this project. By identifying a project template here, what that'll do is create a work breakdown structure for us, which we'll see in just a second here, and actually automatically bring in those resources for us. Again, it knows what we need and when we're going to need them. To the right of this, we started originally tracking estimates against this project, or maybe even earlier at the opportunity level, where we estimated a start date, a finish date, our estimated hours, and the associated cost with that. To the right of that, we're actually bringing in actuals, and maybe this comes from something like an external ERP system, where we actually know our start date, our actual hours that are being tracked against this project, and the actual costs that we've incurred so far. As we continue to scroll down, you see that we even have a tab here for status where we get some nice graphical representations to let us know what is the overall status of this project as we continue to work through it. It's green right now, and the comments show that it's because it's trending on time and on budget. Again, as you can see on the right, scheduled performance on time, cost performance on budget. Scrolling down a little bit further, some charts here to show our progress percentage, our cost consumption percentage, and even breaking it down into the individual roles that are contributing time entries onto this project so we can understand their cost performance and their schedule performance. Now at the top I mentioned by selecting something like a project template, it'll automatically create a work breakdown structure for us for this individual project. Now I've already got this created for the sake of the demo today, and the way that we're going to access that is by hitting this drop down arrow in our top navigation next to the project name. And in here you notice that we have this area here for work breakdown structure. Those in the project space have definitely seen this view, this Gantt chart before, in which we're going in here and we've identified individual tasks, maybe different stages that those tasks sit within, how much time that we're going to need for each individual task if they have any dependencies, which role is necessary for it, and the number of effort hours that we're going to need. Also, what we can do again is identify the start and end date based on our overarching start and end date for the project, and based on the dependencies, how we know who we need and when we're going to need them. You can create this Gantt chart and begin to start actually resourcing this project out using some resource availability tools that are built natively within Dynamics 365. Now, the next thing we're going to look at for this project is if I go back to that same drop-down view next to the project name, we have this area here for project estimates. And if I click that now, you'll notice that at a high level, we are actually looking at kind of an all-up view of this project. I'm going to change this filter here at this top navigation in the gray to look at our time phase by things like the effort hours that we're going to put in. And we notice by an individual resource role level, our program managers, what their estimated start date and end date is going to be, the number of effort hours that they're putting in, and you could see how it splits up over the timeline of that project. If I maybe wanted to get an all-up view of the project estimates, I can click this button here to show a grid view. And in here, as you can see, what we're noticing is the individual line items, those tasks with the associated role, how we're billing that to our client, in this case Johnson & Johnson, start and end date, the effort hours. Then we're even seeing things like the cost price versus the sales price, which is generating our total cost and total sales price here. So this is really giving you a natively nice view, an all-up view of this project that we can then turn over into a quote to our customer, maybe in this case Johnson & Johnson, as we're delivering on this project through the course of the duration. So just a quick recap as we start getting into the latter parts of our demonstration. We started out the presentation in Dynamics 365 in the app for Outlook, in which we tracked an email from Mark Dayton. We went to a meeting with Mark in which we saw all of his information on behalf of the client, Johnson & Johnson, him as an individual contact, and the opportunity that we were working on via our iPad. We got back to our office, got a larger view of the account, a more holistic view of Johnson & Johnson as a client. We worked on that opportunity that we ended up winning, and we converted that into a project and started seeing how we can track some things like estimates and actually bring in things like a work breakdown structure as we start resourcing out that work. So now that we've collected all of this information, it really makes sense for us to see now how can we take that information and gain some insights from it? How can we filter down on all the segmentation information that we've been collecting? What you're looking at now on the screen is a list view, and I'm looking at all of my individual clients. Maybe this is at our entire firm's client list. And the way that I got here is through our top navigation. I went to our marketing app just by hitting this drop down arrow here, clicking on marketing, and I went to our list of clients here. Now, for those that are comfortable, and we understand that a lot of folks in the consulting space have typically used Excel in the past for managing this type of book of business, you probably are familiar with how to navigate around this. It's a very Excel type like experience where we can go in and do things like filter on all the records that we have here. So I can hit this filter button in the top right hand corner to say of all my clients, maybe I want to take a look at the one whose main client services provided are consulting. And even further than that, maybe I want to stack it. I want to look at the ones who only have a great client health. I can do that, hit the filter on the top of the column here. And you notice now that that list that started off at almost 300 records is now dwindled down with the filters that we've put on here to make sense of now just looking at our consulting clients that we have a great client health relationship with. What's great about this too is we can save this list as a dynamic list. I can go into this drop down where it says all clients here, and I have this option at the bottom to save these filters that I've just selected as a brand new view so that it's easy for me to go back into and access on a regular basis. I can also take that curated list and surface that on the dashboard if that's something that I want to see when I log in first thing in the morning. I'm going to take off these filters now and show you how we can also do this by way of a chart. So as opposed to just filtering on the columns here, hidden sort of on the right hand side here, we have our charts sidebar. And in here, these are charts that were either created for me or by me. You can see that the system charts here are the ones that were pushed out at an organizational level. And we're looking at one now for clients by industry. Again, if you notice on the left-hand side, we went back to our larger list of clients, 279 clients. And in this chart here, I have all the different clients by industry, and I can now drill down into any area of that chart as far as the data will let me go. For instance, if I want to look at all of our insurance clients that we have, I can click this area here. Now that list on the left-hand side will reflect only our insurance clients that we have. As you can see, that list of almost 300 is now down to 45. I mentioned you can go as far down as that data will let you go. So of our insurance clients, you notice this little box popped up here where I can select the field that I want to drill down to even further. So let's say I want to look at the client health of our insurance clients. Kind of similar query to what we previously did. And now a new chart is generated. Of our insurance clients, what is the relationship health that we have with them? And we have 19 that are poor. Maybe I want to click that. And now I can see the records on the left-hand side that correspond with those filters that we've selected through this chart view. So again, a very Excel-like experience. That said, as we keep talking about the deep integrations between Office 365 and Dynamics, there's actually an integration here with the Excel platform. We'd be crazy to think that folks don't still want to continue to use Excel as that place where they manage their records, they see their book of business, maybe some analysts are working on pivot tables and pivot charts in Excel where they're comfortable. So it makes sense that Dynamics makes it accessible to take these records out and bring that into Excel. And we have a couple different ways to do that. The first, as you notice in this great toolbar here, is this Export to Excel button. And when I hit this drop down, the first option I have through Office 365 Online is opening this list in Excel Online. And when I do that, through the same window, Excel Online will pop up. And this is especially relevant if I want to make some bulk changes to that list of records that I have. I can do that right through here. Again, this is the native natural Excel experience. And once I make those changes, I can simply then just save those changes back into Dynamics automatically. I'm going to go back to that list view now and show you the other options that we have with Export to Excel. The next is actually taking this and exporting it into an Excel file that would sit on somebody's desktop, which most would think about that and say, well, that's nice and all, and maybe you can use that to kind of analyze the records, you can do your pivot tables and pivot charts, but what about when the data changes 1 week from now or 2 weeks from now or a month from now? You don't have any of the newest data. So you have options here, one being a static worksheet, and that exactly that would happen. This is a static worksheet, nothing changes through here. But we also have this option for dynamic worksheet. And what happens when I click that is that's actually going to download this file for us, exactly as we're seeing it on the list view here. We'll pop that open in Excel here, bring that over. So again, a file that would typically just sit on my desktop, but we run into that issue as we previously thought, how do those records update when changes are made? We now have this option, since this is a dynamic worksheet, this is going to update the data when we prompt it to do so, to go to the Data tab at the top of our spreadsheet, right up here. And you notice that we have a brand new button here for Refresh from CRM. So those analysts, those executives that are comfortable working in Excel can have this spreadsheet that sits on their desktop. Every time they open it up, can hit this Refresh from CRM button to get the newest, most recent living and breathing data that's coming out of your dynamic CRM system. So what we can also do with all this data that we're collecting is actually pass this over to our marketing team so that they can do things like create new marketing lists. For the use case that we'll show here, let's assume that maybe our marketing team wants to set up a consulting newsletter. What you're looking at on my screen is a list view of our active marketing list that we currently have. The way that I got here is through our top navigation in our marketing app, clicking the drop down arrow next to it, and there's that marketing list button here, which is bringing up our list view below. Now from here, what I'll do is click this new button. As we mentioned in the use case, our marketing team wants to create this consulting newsletter. So we'll go ahead and give that a name here. And the next option, the next required field you see here is a list type. And we have two options, one being dynamic and one being static. Similar to the same verbiage that we just saw when we were doing our export to Excel, static meaning that the list that we generate today, the records that sit in this marketing list today, are not going to change. And they're going to be the same records that are sitting in this list a year from now, unless somebody goes in and manually makes changes to that. Alternatively, dynamic is a nice feature in which we would set up something like a query, filters that we want to match based on one of our, let's say, account or client records in CRM. And every time a new client record is edited or a brand new client record is added and it fits the criteria that we're setting up for this consulting newsletter marketing list here, they will dynamically be added to this list. And I'll show you what that looks like. We'll finish our last required field here, our targeted at an account or client. We'll go ahead and save this marketing list, in which will bring up the ability for us to start setting up that query. So here is our grid on the right hand side for members. You notice that it's empty now. If I hit this plus button up here, this is going to bring up that ability for us to create the query, the filters that we want to set up. If a client or an account matches these filters, I want them dynamically added to this list. For this in particular, we're doing the consulting newsletter, so it makes sense that maybe we want to look at our clients that we have that their main client service provided is consulting. So we're automatically looking at client because we identified we're targeting accounts. And through this query builder at the bottom, we'll go to the field of main client services provided, and we want that to equal consulting. Now on top of that, as you probably saw earlier as we were going through and looking at Mark Dayton in particular, we had some fields in there that were telling us whether a contact or a client has opted in or out of receiving certain marketing materials from us. For this use case in particular, we might want to make sure that the client that we're going to be sending this out to has given us permission to send them marketing material. The way that we're going to do that is through that same drop down. We'll go down to send marketing materials, and we want to make sure that that equals send. We'll hit OK. We'll hit find at the bottom right hand side here. You'll notice this is going to bring up a handful of client records that fit the filter criteria that we just set up. We'll hit use query, and now that list of members is automatically generated here. And this is a dynamic list. Just to reiterate again, anytime a new client record is edited or added to fit the filter criteria that we've set up on this marketing list, they are dynamically going to be added as a member to this marketing list so that nobody slips under the radar, and marketing makes sure that they have clients that fit those filters and can continue to market out to them effectively. So to wrap up the demo, it makes sense that we start understanding and taking a look at a 50,000-foot view of the state of our business. And the best way to do that and consume and digest that data is by way of a dashboard. And dashboards are traditionally the first thing a user or somebody might see when they first log into the system in the morning. As you can see here, I'm still logged in as Bryson, the partner with our firm. So he lands automatically on a partner daily dashboard, in which he's got a couple things here. On the left-hand side, a graphical representation of his current sales pipeline. On the right-hand side, syncing up with Microsoft Delve, we're seeing what the most interesting documents might be at any given time. Down below that, we see our team's proposals. And I'm even seeing things like stagnated opportunities, in which we are telling Dynamics to show us a list of opportunities that maybe we've started, we worked on at one point, but have taken so many days in between until we've had any activity on that opportunity. So you can see here, there's a couple that there's been about almost 100 days in between the last time that we've had any activity on them, giving us kind of a cue that maybe that's where we should focus our energy. Down below that, even seeing things like this chart of top accounts by revenue. And it's worth noting that this is a Power BI tile. So back just to tie in all the Office 365 and Dynamics integrations, We're even bringing in Power BI to aggregate all this data and analyze and report on it and surface it on this single pane of glass of this dashboard window. Another dashboard that might be relevant if I click the drop down at the top is something like an account alerts dashboard. So here we're seeing things like upcoming client due dates. We have, again, new team proposals, unhealthy companies, stagnated opportunities, and even showing companies with unpaid invoices. An example of a third dashboard is something like this time to revenue dashboard, in which we're tracking goals against opportunities. How long are we spending in each individual stage on opportunities that we're working on by their individual owner? So we can set up goals that way and incentivize our team to make sure that they are moving progress along their opportunities and closing these in a timely fashion. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.